All right, we want to properly understand, even to begin to understand Hinduism, we need to look at some early cultures of India. Hinduism is very old. It's the oldest of the great religions. We certainly do not know anything about its founders, but we know something about the cultures in which it has its roots. Two of these cultures are particularly important: the Indus Valley civilization and the Aryans. So Hinduism's diversity is in part from the fact that it's the result of merged cultures. Again, I quote the Rig Veda: "The truth is one, but the sages call it by many names." So Hinduism therefore honors all seekers after the truth. This is one of its great strengths and one of the secrets to its longevity, its ability to absorb ideas without giving up its distinctiveness. So let's look first at the Indus Valley civilization. About 150 years ago, a discovery was made that has caused scholars to revise their understanding of early India. The ruins of the Indus Valley civilization were discovered in the 1850s by workers building a railroad in present-day Pakistan, which was, of course, under part of the British Raj. It was as great a civilization easily as ancient Egypt, Mesopotamia. Here's an example of, I think, the city of Mohenjo-Daro. So there's evidence that elements of this culture contributed to the amalgam that is India. The archaeological evidence shows that it flourished between 3000 and 1500 BCE, so up to 5,000 years ago. It's a very, very ancient civilization. These people had writing, but we still can't read it. Eventually, something will give us the way to decode it, and we'll learn a lot more. But we know a lot from the archaeological evidence. 70 cities have been discovered so far, and they're remarkably similar. They possibly contained an average of 40,000 people each. So by ancient standards, this was a huge civilization. Two of the most famous are Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa. It's sometimes called Harappan civilization, but we'll call it the IVC, Indus Valley civilization. Very few weapons have been discovered in the IVC. There's evidence of great sophistication. Many of the residences have indoor bathrooms and plumbing. There are also vast public baths. And you say, well, Rome had that. This was centuries, many centuries before Rome did have that. This and other evidence lead scholars to conclude that the IVC was very concerned with ritual purity. So, let's talk about that idea. It's an important idea in religious studies. So taboos are imposed to help societies impose order and prevent chaos. This is less about personal hygiene and more about social order. So food, people, and places can be defined as either pure or polluted. Ritual purity may have more to do with context than the intrinsic nature of a thing. What am I talking about? Well, you might be one of those people who just is weirded out by filling a glass of water from the tap in the bathroom. Some people don't see what's weird about that. I mean, it's the same water, but some people are kind of freaked out by that. That's what I mean by context trumping the intrinsic nature of a thing. An interesting set of artifacts discovered in the IVC are small seals used to stamp designs in soft clay. They probably had religious significance. Similar seals have been found in Mesopotamia, suggesting a possible commercial connection. I've seen a collection of these Mesopotamian seals. They're a little bigger than the size of a postage stamp. Scholars think that the seals are connected to fertility rituals. They often portray male animals with powerful flanks and rear legs. This, typically in religious studies, is representative of male sexual powers and was connected to the sacred in this age. You see powerful flanks and loins, male sexuality. Why male animals and not humans? Well, this may indicate a human desire to appropriate animal powers. This was a very common belief throughout the early world. This is evident, for example, in some American Indian religions. Further underscoring the IVC's interest in sexuality are numerous terracotta figurines depicting a woman with exaggerated hips and breasts. This is a symbol of fertility. Here's a woman from the IVC, but these are found all over the world. and that suggests the existence of a vast mother goddess religion. There's one of these so-called Venuses that was discovered in France, and it was 20,000 years old. So this is a very prevalent and old idea. The details of this religion are unknown, but clearly the reproductive power of women was sacred to the IBC. The worship of the goddess is deeply rooted in Hinduism and may be related back to the IBC. Stone and clay phalluses, penises, called lingams, were also ubiquitous in the IBC and still play a role in some Hindu practices. For example, the creative energies of Lord Shiva, one of the major Hindu deities, are symbolized by the lingam. The female counterpart of the lingam is the yoni. So direct connections to the IBC are tenuous, but throughout Hinduism there has been a close connection between the sexual and the sacred. Another seal shows a man sitting in what appears to be the lotus position. The legs, feet tucked up on crisscross applesauce, but with the feet up on the thighs. This implies that some members of the IBC were practitioners of meditation. If so, then India has had an interior-looking, contemplative spirit throughout its history. The seated figure has 3 faces pointing in different directions and a horned headdress. Here's a picture. It's clearly depicting the lotus position. Many scholars believe this figure may be an early likeness of the god who came to be known as Shiva, often portrayed with 3 heads to indicate omniscience, all-knowing. Here's a typical iconographic portrayal of Lord Shiva. All of those different things mean something. We'll unpack this later. But you see the resemblance to the horned headdress god in the IBC seal. So to sum up, IBC religion seems intensely concerned with procreation and purity. It may have involved the worship of male animals as a way to incorporate their power. Female reproductive powers were sacred, and the female principle may have been worshipped as a goddess. Purification practices, meditation, and the highly organized city suggest that the IBC placed great emphasis on order and restraint. And as you start to learn about Hinduism and India in general, you'll see this in the present today. All right, let's look at this other civilization, the Aryans, who came from outside the Indian subcontinent. So after discovery of the IBC, scholars speculate as to why the civilization perished. One theory is that the IBC was conquered by the Aryans. The Aryans arrived in the Indian subcontinent about 1500 BCE, so about 3,500 years ago. They were lighter skinned than the inhabitants of the IBC and arrived from the steppes of Central Asia. Specifically now, historians think the ancestors of the Aryans, who were also ancestors of Europeans, lived just north of and between the Black and Caspian Seas. The invasion theory is now in question, however. The IBC appears to have been in decline before 1500 BCE. Between 1900 and 1600 BCE, the Indus River appears to have changed course, desiccating, drying out the entire region, and recent satellite evidence seems to confirm this. The Aryans were part of a massive migration from this area between the Caspian and Black Seas that occurred over many centuries. Many went to Europe, becoming the Greeks, the Latins, and the Germans, Celts. A group of Aryans migrated east into present-day Iran, becoming the Persians. Others pushed further east, settling in the Indian subcontinent. So this portrayal is not quite right. They would have been, and this science is very new, by the way. The Proto-Indo-European speakers would have been here. This probably didn't happen, but this certainly happened, and this happened, and this happened. The Aryans were very different from the people of the IBC. They were pastoral nomads, not settled agricultural people. They used horses. In fact, new evidence suggests they were the first to use horses, to put bits in their mouth and ride them. And have them pull carts. And, they also were very skilled in the use of bronze. It is clear they brought with them different gods, rituals, and language. So these were nomads, but they were very good workers of bronze, and they were masters of horses. Therefore, they were very, very formidable military force. Aryan comes from Sanskrit. It means noble ones. Sanskrit itself means well-formed. Aryans, so Sanskrit is the classical language of India, and it is related to the European classical languages like Latin and Greek. Aryans love their language, and it is linguistic rather than archaeological evidence that they left. Sanskrit is closely linked to many European languages. They jointly belong to the Indo-European language family. Cognates are easily recognized. So the language from which all these languages descend is just referred to as Proto-Indo-European. And it's those Proto-Indo-European speakers that first emerged on the steppes between the Black and Caspian Seas. Here is a depiction of the Proto-Indo-European language family. So we have Proto-Indo-European at the center. And by the way, linguistic algorithms have recreated about several thousand words of what this language, common words in this language. But you see it branch off into all these Europeans on the left, and to the Indo-European, Indo-Iranian on the right. Also something called Tocharian or Tocharian, and that's dead. We know there's two different forms of that language. They went far east to what is today, present day, Western China, but they were destroyed by the frickin' Mongols. The most important evidence the Aryans left by the Aryans were their scriptures, the Veda or the Vedas. The Veda is the oldest and most sacred of Hindu scriptures. For thousands of years, the Veda existed in oral tradition. They were never intended to be written down. The spoken word was very powerful, and the knowledge was highly esoteric. It was almost a magical quality to the spoken Vedas. And so because they existed for so long in oral tradition, we don't know how old the Vedas are. Probably at least 4,000 years, but maybe one estimate is 10,000. That's probably too far back, but you get the idea. The Vedas were written down after Muslims invaded India to protect them, and were exposed to Westerners only in the late 18th century. The Veda is more of a liturgy manual than a story or a narrative. It was clearly designed for use with rituals and accompanied sacrifices. Veda means wisdom. It derives from the Sanskrit word vid, meaning to see. Video is a cognate. The wisdom of the Veda is timeless and transcends even the gods. The words were revealed to ancient seers called rishis in the distant past. Today, the Vedas are regarded as Hinduism's most sacred scripture. Hinduism is sometimes referred to as Vedic Dharma, or the religion of the Veda. So authoritative is the Veda that it remains the criterion for determining Hindu orthodoxy and heterodoxy. Despite this, very few Hindus ever read it. What do they read? Well, we'll talk more about that later.